Have you ever noticed how often in Scripture the very thing intended to stop God's purposes becomes part of the means by which those purposes advance? We see this with Joseph. His brothers knew about his dreams that suggested that one day they would bow before him. And when they saw Joseph coming, they said, "Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will see what will become of his dreams." Genesis 37:20. They were essentially saying, let's stop this from ever happening. But they didn't kill Joseph. They sold him. The selling of Joseph eventually brought him to Egypt, the very place where God would raise him up to power. Years later, Joseph's brothers came to Egypt during the famine and bowed before him. Think about the irony, and this irony is like a thread in Scripture. Their attempt to prevent the dream became part of the means by which the dream was fulfilled. And Joseph himself eventually interprets what happened. "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." Genesis 50:20. They really did mean evil, but their evil intention could not overthrow God's good purpose. Then we see a similar pattern with Moses. Pharaoh looked at the growing population of Israel and became afraid. So he oppressed them and eventually commanded that the Hebrew sons be killed. But during that very crisis, a Hebrew baby was placed in a basket in the Nile. And who found him? Pharaoh's daughter. She brought him into Pharaoh's own household and raised him as her son. That child was Moses. The ruler attempting to suppress Israel unknowingly became part of the circumstance through which the man God would use to deliver Israel was preserved. Then there is Haman. Haman hated Mordecai in the book of Esther and plotted not only against him but against the Jewish people. He even prepared gallows specifically for Mordecai. And when Haman's plot was exposed, the story reversed. Haman himself was hanged on the gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. His plot against the Jews ended not only in their destruction, but in their deliverance and his downfall. And then we come to Christ. This is where the pattern reaches its greatest expression. Jesus' enemies wanted to eliminate him. They arrested him, they condemned him, and ultimately they crucified him. From a human perspective, it looked like evil had overcome. Jesus was dead. But Acts 2:22 tells us that Jesus was delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God, while also holding the people who crucified him responsible for their actions. Their actions were evil, and yet they could not overthrow the purposes of God. In fact, this is the irony. The death they intended to use to eliminate Christ became central to the very saving work God had purposed to accomplish through him. And then Christ rose from the dead. What looked like evil's greatest victory became the place of its decisive defeat. Now, this does not mean that every evil thing will visibly backfire, and it does not mean that evil somehow becomes good, and Scripture never asks us to call evil good. Joseph's brother meant evil. Those who crucified Christ were responsible for what they did, but Scripture repeatedly shows us something greater, and this is worth paying attention to. Evil may oppose God's purposes, but it cannot overthrow them. God is sovereign, that even when his creatures intend for evil, they cannot ultimately place his purpose in jeopardy. Joseph's brothers could not destroy the dream. Pharaoh could not destroy God's people. Haman could not destroy the Jews. And the grave could not hold Christ. What God purposes will stand forever.